Welcome back. Like I said, we're in the final stretch before the presidential elections, but the governorship elections will be holding 2 weeks after that. And you can't talk about Nigeria without talking about Lagos State because it's a fundamental part of this country and its economy. And as you heard before, we did invite both candidates for the governorship elections in Lagos, but the PDP candidate is here to talk to us, and the APC candidate was invited, but unfortunately turned us down. If I may use that in very clear terms. I have here with me Mr. Jimi Agbaje. Thanks for being here today.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much for coming. There's a lot to talk about with Lagos State. Like I said, it's the most important state in Nigeria, without any doubt. And I think everybody knows that fact. And I want to start with something that I think every Nigerian knows Lagos for, which is traffic. And it's something that we seem to find solutions to when we talk about the rails that has been built and all of that. But I want to talk more specific. In the short term, do you have any plans to ease the pains of Lagosians with traffic?
Well, in the short term, definitely. I mean, I will concede that the BRT is a very good idea. Unfortunately, the implementation has not been the best. So we've got to look at the implementation of the BRT and see how you can make it better for the people. Of course, you've got to be, you find a lot of traffic too is with potholes here and there. There's small patches that are bad, and that tends to work very badly. And so again, it's to be stronger, so to say, on those patchy areas, because you find that once you patch them, traffic moves better. So you've got to do that better. You've got to do the rail, definitely. We've got the water also. If you look at places like Ikorodu, Ikorodu takes an average about 4 hours to Lagos from Ikorodu. But by water, it's just about 30 minutes. And so if you're able to do that, then you're able to release people from the roads.
But the present administration seems to have at least be on that track with waterways in particular. Are they not already working on that? Are you going to be doing anything differently?
Yes. What you've had on the waterways is you've got small boats, very small boats, and there's still many people who are still very scared of those small boats. So we've got to see how we can get bigger boats, ferries more or less, so that people feel safer. It's only the strong that tend to use those small boats across the water. So you've got to do that. And then, like I said, you've got to look at those roads, especially the patchy areas, and just try and do something.
I want to talk about Apapa. It's a very complex place. But before we get to that, actually, I saw a poll not too long ago about some of the causes of traffic in Lagos. And number one, by a mile, was downfall buses. And people have talked about, should we ban it? Should we phase it out? Should we completely take them out for BRTs to replace them? But it's going to be a very controversial decision to take, because you know what happened when Okadas were banned and people got very angry. Is this something you're going to be looking at?
Yeah, it's not about banning. When you watch, if you're observant, you find that you create a bus stop where there shouldn't be a bus stop. The way it starts is you just drop one person today, then tomorrow there are 2 buses dropping people there, and then it's 4 buses. And once you do that, then all of a sudden there's a person who's selling orange who now sees, like, look, this is a small market here, and then you set up a small market there, and so you've created another bottleneck. That's the way. So the idea is not to encourage the coming up of these spots, so to say, and then trying to clean up those areas that are just not good for traffic.
Let's talk about Apapa now, because I mentioned that. And I think it's one place that, you're laughing because everybody knows how terrible Apapa is today, and we're not sure what the problem is. The federal government blames the state government says it's the federal government. Today tankers are not there, tomorrow they're back. One breaks down and the entire town is in lock. Yeah. What is the solution to Apapa?
Well, I stay in Apapa, that's why I was laughing. So, you don't need to tell me how bad it is. But I think it's the fact that the way our economy is, one, you got probably 90% plus of petroleum products that are utilized or consumed or used in this country coming from Apapa.
Which is very important.
So that means that you got all the tankers coming in. You got the seaports. Again, the bulk of the imports in this country come from Tinkan and Apapa. So you got that there. And you've only got 2 ways out of Apapa, or in and out of Apapa. Now, of course, it's no longer workable. And these are part of the challenges of a growing mega city. So in addressing that is one, now the tankers are coming in because the pipelines are no longer working. Don't forget that the pipelines were vandalized right through, because ideally the pipelines that go right across this country to pump petroleum products. But those are no longer working because they've been vandalized, and that's why you're having to lift. So we've got to get those pipelines back, and that means we need to have some measure of security so that those pipelines are no longer vandalized. So that's one. Secondly, we've got to put some kind of a real system in place from our ports to just lift products away. Then we've got to have a park outside Apapa where there is a system where only those tankers and trailers that are needed at any point in time are allowed to come into Apapa. So you need a park, a tanker trailer park outside Apapa where there's communication between the ports, between the tank farms.
But I hear that something like that had been tried and the tanker drivers have refused to go.
They refused because, again, the government, in this case, the state, this was with the state government, they didn't agree on how to get it to work. So it's important that we see it as important. And so the government must agree with the tanker, the trailer people to get this thing sorted out.
It needs to be sorted out. But just one final question before we leave transportation now, because you've mentioned rail a few times.
Sure.
And I know the present administration, it was one of their focal points. They started working on the blue line.
Yeah.
That was going to end up in Marina, but the completion date was supposed to be last year, I think.
2012.
It wasn't met, and there's a lot of talk about funding being an issue. Are you going to stop that program? If you're going to continue it, how do you expect to fund it?
Oh, definitely not stop. I think the model that is being used is the problem. The blue line was supposed to have been ready 2012, and they were in 2015. But then it's because I think government has decided to take more than it can chew. Ideally, the way you run the rail line is similar to what you do with the bus system, where government does the roads and the private people run the bus. But I think in this case, what government has done, what the state government has done, is try to do the rail lines and also do the coaches. So it's too much for it. It doesn't have the resources, and so it's a start and stop thing, and that's really where we are. And so that's something. But since we're talking about debates, it's interesting that a mega city is about planning ahead. And don't forget that on the Jacon Day, we're going to have the metro line. It's interesting that it's the present presidential candidate that cancelled that metro line. So maybe if we had the metro line at that time, we would not be having these kind of problems today.
I knew you were going to throw that in, actually.
Well, it's debate.
But let's talk about security now, because you actually mentioned security there. And Lagos is not particularly affected by, at least directly, by terrorism and Boko Haram and all of that. But something that seems to be on the rise these days is armed robbery.
Yeah.
We've heard so many stories. You were at the scene in Lekki where the unfortunate incident happened, I think, last week. Are there things you're going to be doing differently? Do you support state policing, for example, because it's a hot topic now?
Yeah.
The APC seems to want to push that. Generally, are you something you're going to be working
No, I'm not sure it's an APC thing, honestly. I mean, I support state police, and I'm not APC. So I believe that we need to have state police. We need to have state police because, as a government, as a state government, you've got priorities. The police is federal, is stretched. So if I say I want to talk about the spots where people are just dropping people unnecessarily, for example, the federal police may say, look, we've got bigger problems. But if I have a state police, I say, I need you to do this. These are some of the benefits. If I have a state police, I know that the communities are better policed. So definitely, I am for having a state police.
The biggest reason people are against it is because of how it might be used by state governors. Is this something you're also worried about?
Well, you can't, because of something, just... It's like, which is better, to have it or not to have it? There are pros and cons to everything. So yes, that is one downside to it. But then there is, the purpose for having a state police, the benefits are more than that. I mean, you're talking of, people are afraid that you'd use it, to be force against force. Again, you can have guidelines. You can talk about the kind of arms that the state police can have. You can talk about their jurisdiction, their limitations. These are things that can be addressed. But to say that you're not going to have it is really just running away from the reality.
So why does it seem like your party, on the federal level at least, seems to be against it?
No, in fact, don't forget that I think it's the APC that is against it, because presently the National Conference finished recommending state police. The APC doesn't seem to like the National Conference. They don't seem to like even the outcomes of the National Conference. President Jonathan is saying very clearly that when he comes back, he's going to ensure that National Conference report is adopted. And one of the recommendations in that report is for a state police. So I think it's the other party that is saying one thing and doing something else.
It's very important to everybody to know what your plans are with regards to, are we going to be paying more tax, for example? I know it was a big part of APC's policy in the last 16 years, which is why internally generated revenue has grown. But people say there's a lot more that still needs to be done. So people are saying, oh, we're paying too much. What is your policy on tax?
Well, we're talking about fairer taxes. So it wouldn't be correct to say we're going to pay more, we're going to pay less. We're going to pay fairer taxes. I think the issue is that, government lives on taxes and must live on taxes. So let me be very clear that government must collect taxes. But having said that, government cannot be seen or should not be overburdening the citizens or those captured in this tax net in a way that, it's like you're carrying some burden that you may not survive, So you've got to have fairer taxes.
So how will your policy differ from what's happening now?
What happens today is government, in wanting to raise money, takes advantage of the regulatory agencies to raise money in a wrong manner. You set up a regulatory agency, it has a major objective. But what you find today is that the major objective of those regulatory agencies is revenue generation rather than what they were set up for. So if you have a LASMA, for example, if your LASMA's objective is to ensure free flow of traffic. But God help you if LASMA catches you for anything, then they're going to ask you for your tax clearance. They're going to ask you if it's a company. They're going to ask you for the director's tax clearance. They're going to fine you heavily. And you're wondering that, hey, all I had was a traffic contravention. Why all this? It's like you're caught and you got to cough out everything. So if you have a LASA, or you even want to apply you want to build a house, for example. You want to apply for approved plan for construction permit. And government, the whole essence of applying is to ensure that what you want to build is not going to collapse on anybody's head and to make sure that it's right. But government puts these fees that are such that it discourages people from even coming forward to apply. And so you find that some of the fallout is that a lot of houses that are being built today, people are just not coming forward to apply. And they're building without that. Again, it's discouraging people from investing in housing because of those kinds of restrictions. So what I'm saying is, you got to pay taxes, no doubt about that, but it's got to be fair taxes, and that's very important.
Still on tax, and I want to ask something very personal. You've been called a tax evader.
Yeah.
I know you've addressed that before.
Yeah.
What's the story behind that?
Oh, very simple. Politics. I was called a serial tax evader. I was shocked when I heard. I didn't even believe it. Because just about 2 weeks before, I got a letter from Lagos State government, direct to Jimi Agbaje, a letter of appreciation as to saying how good I was in paying my land use charge. In fact, this wasn't even tax; it was land use charge. The issues as to how I was very good at paying my land use charge and blah 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 blah. So 2 weeks after, I then hear that I'm being called a serial tax evader, and I'm like, hang on, that can't be. I have a letter. But then after that, you then had a situation where they say, okay, it's not you now, it's your company. Now, yes, it's my company and I'm not disowning the company, but this is a company that I ran up till 2006. I've not been involved in the direct running of the company. I'm an investor, it's my company. But then I couldn't respond immediately because I had to ask those in the company, are you owing land use charge? And everything was explained. We brought this out, but in a nutshell, is to say that that wasn't true. And the company came out and said it wasn't true. But then, like I said, it has to be politics. Because even when my company issued a statement, actually stating everything that they were not owing, the governor came out again after that to say, oh, in fact, Jimi Agbaje has now accepted and has now paid 500,000. And I'm like, hang on, what's going on here? Nothing had been paid. If somebody is a serial person, I think it would be the person who's been telling the serial lies, not me.
let's still stick with the personal questions now, because I know that you have a lot of fans, and I use that word very, very strongly, because I know people who say I will vote Jimi Agbaje regardless of what party he's in, and this didn't start today. It's 2007.
Yes.
And those same people have expressed a few doubts recently, especially with there was a youth party that happened at the Echo Hotel with Mr. President, where you spoke, and people said he's not sounding like the guy we know anymore. You talked about General Buhari saying, "Oh, if fine pass our candidate," things like that.
Okay.
That you had watered down your personality and your campaign. Why are you making that shift?
No, I think you got to understand that you got different audiences and you got different messages for the audiences. I mean, this is a different audience. I'm talking to you differently. If you go into a rally kind of audience, you're not speaking for too long. You've got 2-3 minutes. Basically, is to excite them, is to make them feel good, and that was it. So it has nothing to do with this or that. I mean, I said a lot of other things. And I say different things at different times. But whatever I say.
Don't you feel like this campaign should have risen above a place where we're having personal attacks, especially on things that are baseless?
I'm someone that is more about ideas, because in any case, that's what it should be. And that's the honest truth. It has to be about ideas rather than personalities. I am definitely not for negative campaigns. It's not my style. But then we've been dragged into this, and sometimes you just have to respond. Yeah. It's like the cereal thing. My first reaction was not to respond until I got hammered once. I got hammered twice. Then you say, come, I can also hammer.
Still sticking with that now, because a lot of people have said he's not sort of a PDP guy. He joined them because he wants to win Lagos State governorship. And we saw this thing on social media. I'm not one of them. I'm not, all of that. Is it are you a PDP member? Are you proud of that party?
I don't know what you mean by he's not a PDP guy. And that's being honest. If you say that where I started my politics was somewhere and I've moved, yes. But to say I'm not a PDP, I'm asking, what's a PDP guy? What makes you a PDP guy and what makes you an APC guy? At the level of development of our politics, you've got people that have moved both sides, and it's like when they move, then they become some other guy. So no, there's nothing like being one of. When I say I'm not one of them, what the message is that I'm not your typical politician. So it has nothing to do with the party. It's got to do with politics in general. You tend to look at politicians, they tell lies, they do this. I want to believe that people.
Does that include people in your party?
Yeah, that's what. On all parties, politicians. That's why I say I'm not one of them. In other words, I'm not your typical politician. I want you to see me for what I am. If I tell you something, I want you to believe what I'm saying. So I'm not saying things just for saying sake. And I think that's what's working for me. So the day I begin to say things that are not true, things I don't mean, then I'll be in trouble. I want you to be able to look back at the last 8-10 years and say, what did Jimmy stand for 8 years ago? Has he moved from that point? What am I selling today? Am I saying that the things that I sold, the ideas I sold 8 years ago, have I done a turnaround on them today? No, I haven't. So it's irrelevant what party I am. I'm still standing for those same things that I believe in. And that's what matters.
Before I go to the final question, very, very quickly now, what are your thoughts and relationship with Bode George?
He's a party leader. He's my party leader in Lagos, and that's a statement of fact. I'm not his stooge, if that's what you want to hear. And those who know me know that I'm nobody's stooge. If that's what you want to hear, there's nothing like that. He's the party leader. But I think, again, we've got to be very fair. And this is something I would stick, again, like I said, I'm not a typical politician, so I'll say it, and for whatever it's worth. We've got to accept one thing. It's either you believe in the rule of law or you do not believe in the rule of law. Now, if a man is charged to court and is sentenced for a crime, and a superior court reverses that crime, that sentence, then he's not guilty.
Okay.
So it's either you accept it, but it's not fair to take something when you think it favors you.
All right, we
and that's important.
Just final word now to Lagosians. I don't know if you have anything to say to them.
Well,
quickly before we go.
It's election time again. It's election time again. Mine is, you've got to go out there and vote. I take my example. My vote was annulled many years ago. And since then, I've never been the same. And that's what really put me into activism, into politics. You've got to go out there and vote. Vote your choice, but vote right. Vote for who you believe in. That's important. Don't be discouraged. Nigeria is going to get much better.
Amen.
Lagos, even much better.
Thank you very much, Jimi Agbaje. Thanks for joining us
Thank
today.
you.
Good luck with your election.
Thank you very much.